On a World War I hospital ship, wrecked in the Black Sea, Nicholas entered fungal-lit operating rooms. Rusting medical instruments and empty ether bottles littered shelves, while ship's logs pinned to the walls detailed undocumented epidemics. The air smelled of salt and decay, but something else lingered, a trace of camphor, as if bodies had been prepared for something beyond death. He collected fungal samples, noticing they glowed brighter under the fading twilight. A faded map on the ward floor showed routes between Constantinople and Vladivostok, with coded markings along the Chinese coast. Nicholas pocketed it, unaware that those lines would coincide with inscriptions he would study decades later, as an ancient text translator. That night, he dreamt of faceless soldiers carrying blue torches, marching in perfect synchronicity across a structure that seemed to stretch to the horizon. Freya, a naval historian with a kerosene lantern, deciphered charcoal markings on the walls, revealing escape routes used by spies. In a captain's cabin safe, she found microfilms of censored medical treatises and photos of soldiers with symptoms never mentioned in official records. The images showed wounds that appeared to follow lunar cycles, closing and reopening every 7 days. One document mentioned a secret agreement between Ottoman doctors and Chinese emissaries, referring to a biological communication system tested on prisoners. Freya realized the coordinates on the microfilms matched sections of the Great Wall near Biangulum, where tourists had recently vanished during nighttime expeditions. She sent Nicholas an encrypted email, attaching photos of the charcoal markings and a warning: they used the bodies as messengers. The wall wasn't just a barrier, but a receiver. While translating the hospital ship's logs, Nicholas discovered references to a project called Yaoxing, celestial medicine. The texts described injections of bioluminescent fungus into soldiers to transmit signals through flesh, using the vascular system as a communication medium. He compared the notes with inscriptions on the structure photographed by Freya, noticing the stone carvings followed patterns identical to the codes on the ship's maps. During an expedition to Biangulum, he and Freya found subterranean chambers with walls covered in veins of quartz pulsing gently to the touch. An ancient mechanism, activated by pressing specific characters, revealed a tunnel leading to a sealed laboratory. There, vials containing fungus identical to the ship's floated in amber liquid, labeled with 1917 dates. When he opened one, the substance adhered to his glove, forming Chinese characters that evaporated within minutes. Outside, tourists filmed the wall at dawn, oblivious to the fact that beneath their feet, a millennia-old communication network still breathed, waiting to be reactivated. Freya adjusted her lantern over a decaying wooden table, while Nicholas translated the characters etched into the newly discovered tunnel walls. The flickering light revealed symbols resembling constellations intertwined with designs that looked like human veins. She noticed that the charcoal markings, previously interpreted as escape routes, actually formed a grid of coordinates when overlaid on the structure's map. They weren't spies, she said, tracing a sand-glass-shaped carving with her finger. They were messengers. Each route corresponded to a data collection point: body temperature, heart rate, even emotions recorded by skin reactions. Nicholas agreed, recalling the ship's logs describing soldiers being prepared with fungal injections. They followed the tunnel to a larger chamber, where spiraling stones glowed with the same bioluminescence as the lab samples. In the center, a jade altar held a fissure containing dried blood residue and an inscription: "The structure hears through the flesh." As they documented the patterns, a rumble echoed above them. They rushed to the surface to find tourists being hastily evacuated by guards claiming structural instability. Freya, however, recognized one of the men, a Russian intelligence officer she had previously interrogated about disappearances in the region. Later, at the hotel, she found an envelope under her door with recent photos of villagers near the structure, all displaying the same cyclical scars as the soldiers in the microfilm. An anonymous note warned, "Stop following the Yaoxing pattern." Nicholas suggested comparing the ancient fungus DNA with that of the affected people, but the contracted lab canceled the service without explanation. That night, during a blackout, Freya saw hotel windows illuminate with the same bluish glow of the fungus, forming codes only Nicholas could decipher. They decided to return to the subterranean chamber, this time at midnight, when the moon would align with one of the structure's towers. Touching the jade altar, the floor trembled, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a deep well with spiraling carved steps. At the bottom, they found a complex of bronze devices, resembling sundials, connected by tubes that transmitted pulses of light. Freya realized the mechanisms used blood pressure as a power source. The messengers not only carried information, but also fueled the network. In an adjacent room, star maps projected on the ceiling synchronized with the pulse patterns of the quartz veins. Nicholas deciphered a final inscription. The system is complete only with the sacrifice of 3 fungus carriers. Before they could react, red lights began flashing, and distorted voices filled the air, repeating ancient Mandarin numbers. Freya rushed to disable the tubes, but a masked figure blocked the exit, holding an amber vial identical to those in the lab, this time filled with fresh fungus. The masked figure moved swiftly, pouring the vial's contents into one of the tubes. The fungus spread like a glowing web, connecting to the quartz veins and emitting a low hum. Freya recognized the uniform beneath the mask. It was the same Russian officer she had seen during the evacuation. He spoke in Mandarin, with a heavy accent. "You reactivated the system too soon." Nicholas, however, was focused on the walls, where the light patterns now projected geographical coordinates overlaid on human silhouettes. "They aren't sacrifices," he murmured. "They are volunteers. The fungus preserves consciousness while their bodies transmit data." Before the officer could react, a muffled explosion echoed from above, and dust rained down from the ceiling. As they ran back to the surface, they found a nearby village that had been hastily evacuated. Empty huts displayed household altars with offerings of dried fungus, and on the walls, children had drawn figures with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. Suddenly, a girl in a faded dress appeared, carrying a silk map identical to those on the hospital ship. "They come every full moon," she said, pointing towards the mountains. "The glowing men." Freya noticed the girl had the same cyclical scars as the soldiers, but without signs of infection, only symmetrical patterns, like organic circuits. High on the structure, tourists filmed what was supposedly a meteorological phenomenon. Blue lights flickered in rhythm with the codes projected in the sky. The Russian officer reappeared, this time accompanied by 2 agents with devices that interfered with cell phone signals. "You have 2 choices," he said, holding up the empty vial. "Hand over the data, or become part of the system." But Nicholas had already realized the girl had followed the group there. He whispered something in her ear, and she nodded, running towards a specific tower. Reaching it, she touched a sequence of loose stones, exactly like the ship's codes. The entire structure trembled. The blue lights converged into a single point, forming a sphere that swallowed the officer and his agents before dissipating. Freya ran to Nicholas, who held a quartz fragment with a new inscription. "The system obeys only those who carry the pattern." The girl smiled, revealing markings on her tongue identical to those on the tunnel walls. "They made me for this," she said, disappearing into the shadows. Later, as authorities questioned tourists about strange lights, Freya and Nicholas destroyed the remaining microfilms and samples. But that night, both dreamt of the girl playing a melody on a jade flute, as the structure transformed into a bridge between the stars.